Okay, I want to start this deep dive with a number, just a single number, $1.
That is a number that breaks pretty much every business school textbook in existence. I mean, it just doesn't compute.
It really doesn't. Because usually when we talk about media acquisitions, especially involving these massive, publicly traded casino companies, we're talking billions, or at the very least hundreds of millions.
Right. Billions with a B.
But today we are talking about a guy who sold his company for an absolute fortune and then, in a twist that I still, frankly, struggle to wrap my head around, bought it back for a single dollar bill.
And that deal, that singular moment in August 2023, is really the skeleton key to understanding our subject today. It tells you everything you need to know about the collision between, corporate America and this new concept of the uncancelable internet celebrity.
Exactly. We are diving into the world of Dave Portnoy,
Yeah.
Presidente, the founder of Barstool Sports. And look, if you were listening to this, you probably have an opinion on him.
Oh, for sure. There's no middle ground.
Maybe you love the pizza reviews and swear by the app. Maybe you despise the politics and the online aggression. But our mission today isn't to judge him. It isn't to decide if he's a saint or a sinner. It is to disassemble the machine.
Right. We want to understand the mechanics. How does a guy who, failed as an education major build a counterculture empire that rivals legacy media? What is the actual math behind the Barstool conservatism brand? And how does he manage to be a philanthropist, saving small businesses and a self-proclaimed union buster at the exact same time?
It's a paradox. And to explore it, we are pulling strictly from the biographical data, business records, and public statements detailed in his Wikipedia entry, current as of early 2026. We are stripping away the noise to look at the facts.
The raw data of the man, so to speak.
Exactly. So whether you love him, hate him, or just know him as the one-bite guy, this deep dive explains how he became one of the most influential and, let's be honest, divisive voices in modern media.
And what his career says about the current state of fame, finance, and cancel culture.
So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
I want to go back to the beginning. Because the current image, the private jets, the Hamptons parties, the courtside seats, it really masks a pretty desperate origin story. I think people assume he burst out of the womb with a cigar in his mouth, ready to take on the world.
It definitely wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Not at all. And to understand the desperation and the drive that came from it, you have to look at the timeline. Dave Portnoy wasn't a prodigy. He was born in 1977 in Swampscott, Massachusetts.
Okay, so a pretty standard suburban background.
Very standard. It was a Jewish upbringing. His dad, Michael, was a lawyer. His mom, Linda, was a high school teacher. I mean, it's the picture of a stable, middle-class American life.
And I saw a note here about a weird coincidence with ESPN's Todd McShay. What's that about?
Yeah, it's one of those small world details that you almost wouldn't believe if it was in a movie script. They were born in the same hospital on the exact same day. Yeah, they were classmates at Swampscott High. But their paths just diverged so dramatically. While McShay went the traditional, polished sports journalism route, Portnoy went to the University of Michigan. And here is the first major contradiction in his life story. He graduated in 1999 with a degree in education.
So technically, in another timeline, Dave Portnoy is teaching high school social studies somewhere in Massachusetts.
Technically, he is qualified, but he's been very clear in interviews that he had zero intention of actually teaching. He just needed a degree. It was a means to an end.
So the real education was happening elsewhere.
His real education happened on a site he launched while he was still in college, called thegamblingman.com.
Which sounds less like a business plan and more like a warning sign for his parents.
It's definitely a precursor, a sign of things to come. But the reality check hit him hard after graduation. He moves back to Boston and takes a job at a place called the Yankee Group.
What did they do?
IT market research. So just imagine that for a second. The guy who runs the wildest carnival in sports media is sitting in a cubicle analyzing tech trends.
And he hated it, I'm assuming.
He was miserable. Absolutely miserable. He was grinding in that cubicle, and to escape the boredom, he was betting sports heavily on the side. And when I say heavily, I mean destructively.
How heavily are we talking?
He calls himself a degenerate gambler during this period. He wasn't just losing his paycheck. In his mid-20s, he lost $30,000 in a single year.
Wow. That's a lot of money for a guy in his 20s in the early 2000s.
It's a huge amount. And by 2004, the hole was too deep to climb out of. He actually filed for bankruptcy protection.
Pause there. Bankruptcy. Before Barstool was even a thing?
Yes. This is the crucial detail so many people miss. He owed $59,000 to credit card companies and another $18,000 to his father. He was completely underwater.
So this whole empire wasn't founded by some wealthy entrepreneur with a venture capital check and a vision board?
No. It was founded by a guy who had hit financial rock bottom. He was born out of desperation. He had nothing to lose, which, probably explains a lot of the early risk-taking.
So Barstool starts in 2004, but it's not a website yet. It's not a podcast network. What was it?
No, and this is the grind part of the mythology that he always references, and for good reason. It was a 4-page, black and white print newspaper, and he wasn't mailing it out. Portnoy was physically standing on subway platforms in Boston, handing these things out to commuters.
That is a tough sell. Here, take my gambling pamphlet. I can't imagine the reception was great.
It was brutal. He's talked about waking up at 4 a.m., standing in the freezing Boston cold, trying to get people to just take a piece of paper from him. The content was designed to reject political correctness. It was aimed squarely at that bro culture demographic.
The guy at the end of the bar?
The guy at the end of the bar, exactly.
Yeah.
But the financials were bleak. I mean, who wants to advertise in a pamphlet handed out by a random guy in a windbreaker on the tee? And this leads to the first major strategic pivot. We talk about sex sells as a cliche, but for Portnoy, it was literally a survival tactic.
The cover strategy.
That's the one. He realized that a picture of a spreadsheet or a football player wasn't stopping commuters in their tracks. So he stopped putting sports stats on the cover, and he started putting photos of local women in bikinis.
And I'm guessing the graph went up and to the right.
Immediately. It
Yep.
changed the entire distribution model because people actually started picking up. Suddenly, the stack of papers he brought with him would disappear every morning. It was a crude, maybe even cynical move, but it worked.
And where was the money coming from? If local businesses weren't advertising, how did he fund it?
This is another key part of the early DNA. He was funding this paper largely through ads from offshore betting sites, places like Party Poker.
Which were operating in a legal gray area in the U.S. at the time, to put it mildly.
Gray is very generous. They were largely illegal. The Department of Justice was actively cracking down on them. So from day one, from the very beginning, Portnoy built his business in the margins, completely outside the establishment rules.
He was taking money from companies that ESPN or Fox Sports wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole.
Exactly, and that freedom from corporate oversight became part of the brand. Then, in 2007, he finally pivots to the blog format, and that's where El Presidente is truly born.
Let's talk about that persona. Because there is Dave Portnoy, the human, and then there's El Presidente, the character, and sometimes it feels like even he doesn't know where the line is.
It's a total blur. But the character was a reaction to the environment at the time. You have to remember the context of 2007-2010 sports media.
Very polished. Very corporate.
Incredibly polished. It was Bob Costas, it was suits, teleprompters, protect the shield. Portnoy offered the absolute opposite. He offered the way guys actually talked at a bar. It was crude, it was unfair, it was biased, but it felt real.
Authenticity. Or at least perceived authenticity. That's the magic ingredient.
That's everything. It built a connection that was incredibly sticky. His fans, the Stoolies, they didn't just like the content. They identified with it. They felt like they were part of this renegade crew fighting against the suits.
And that loyalty, that army he built, is what eventually attracted the big money.
The really big money.
Okay, let's fast forward to that money, because the valuation ride here is where this story gets really technical and, frankly, fascinating. This is where the business students listening need to pay attention.
It's a classic 3-act play. Act 1 is 2016. A company called the Churning Group buys a majority stake.
And what did that do for them?
That was the legitimacy phase. It professionalized the operation. They moved the whole thing from a small office in Massachusetts to New York City. They got a real office. They started hiring real production staff, video editors, the works.
They became a real media company.
They did. But Act 2 is where it gets crazy. That's Penn Entertainment.
This is the big one. And Penn isn't a media company.
Not at all. They are a massive casino and gambling operator. They own racetracks and casinos all across the country. And they look at Barstool not as a blog, but as a customer acquisition funnel.
They didn't want the content. They wanted the audience.
They wanted the Stoolies. They wanted all those young men to stop betting on DraftKings and start betting on the Penn app, which they would rebrand as the Barstool Sportsbook.
So they buy in.
They buy a 36% stake in early 2020 for $163 million. That valuated the company at, almost $500 million?
Which is an astronomical sum for what started as a newspaper handout.
And it gets better. In February 2023, they decide to buy the rest of it. They acquire the remaining 64% for another $388 million.
So Portnoy is out, she cashes out, he has hundreds of millions of dollars. The company he built from nothing is now wholly owned by a publicly traded corporation that's subject to gaming commissions in every state.
And that, right there, is where the friction started. You see, you can't have El Presidente, a guy who is getting into public shouting matches, sparking controversies, and being generally ungovernable, running a brand that's owned by a company that needs regulatory approval in strict states like Massachusetts or Nevada.
The regulators started asking questions. I remember reading about this.
They did more than ask questions. They looked at Portnoy and said, if you want a gambling license in our state, you can't be associated with this guy. There are public hearings where regulators specifically cited Portnoy's past comments and behavior as reasons to deny Penn a license.
So Penn was facing a choice.
A very stark choice. Keep Barstool and risk losing their licenses, which is their actual, multi-billion-dollar business, or dump Barstool and save the mothership.
So they dumped it, but the price tag, going back to our intro, $1.
August 2023, just 6 months after spending $388 million to buy the rest of the company, Penn Entertainment sells 100% of Barstool Sports back to Dave Portnoy for $1.
I still need you to explain the economics of that. Penn spent over $500 million total. Why give it away for $1? Why not sell it to someone else for, I don't know, $50 million, $100 million?
2 reasons. Speed and liability. To sell it to a third party takes months, maybe even a year. You need due diligence, negotiations, lawyers. Penn needed to stop the bleeding immediately to save their licenses. Every single day they held on to Barstool was a risk to their core gaming operation.
Okay, so speed was a factor. What about liability?
Portnoy was the brand. Without him, the asset is worth significantly less. I mean, who buys Barstool without Dave Portnoy? The brand is completely tied to his personality. So they couldn't just sell it to a private equity firm and keep him on.
Because he's the reason they had to sell it in the first place.
Exactly. It's catch-22. So they essentially wrote it off as a massive marketing expense that went horribly wrong. They took a $500 million loss on the balance sheet to save the rest of the company.
But Portnoy didn't get it back scot-free, right? There were some strings attached.
Oh, yeah. There are some serious golden handcuffs in that deal. For one, he signed non-compete agreements regarding gambling. He can't just turn around and start a sportsbook with DraftKings the next day.
That makes sense.
And the big one, the one that really matters, is a clause stating that if he ever sells Barstool again, Penn gets 50% of the gross proceeds.
Ah, so they kept a lottery ticket just in case. If he builds it back up and sells it for $1 billion in 10 years, they get $500 million back.
Precisely. But from Portnoy's perspective, he got his empire back, he kept the hundreds of millions from the initial sale, and he regained total and complete editorial freedom. He no longer has to answer to a board of directors or a gaming commission. It's arguably the greatest trade in media history.
It's unbelievable. And since getting it back, he hasn't exactly stayed small. We are recording this in January 2026. What has he been doing with that freedom?
Well, paradoxically, he pivoted back toward the mainstream. In a huge move in July 2025, he announced a wide-ranging partnership with Fox Sports. He became an analyst on Big Noon Kickoff, which is their flagship college football show.
Which is just so ironic. The guy who spent 20 years mocking the suits at ESPN and Fox is now sitting at the desk wearing a blazer, well, maybe not a blazer, knowing him, but he is part of the broadcast.
It signals a major shift. He's now powerful enough that the establishment needs him more than he needs them. Fox knows that traditional TV viewership is aging out. Portnoy brings the youth. He's a direct pipeline to the 18 to 34-year-old male demographic.
He also launched a new product line with a pretty big partner.
Yeah, Lucky One Lemonade. It's a vodka-based, ready-to-drink beverage. And he partnered with High Noon, which is a giant in that space. But the branding is all built around his dog, Miss Peaches, with a goal raising $1 million for animal rescue charities.
We'll definitely get to the dog because she is a celebrity in her own right. But I want to talk about the content engine that makes all of this possible. Because for millions of people, especially on platforms like TikTok, Dave Portnoy isn't the guy who swindled a casino company. He's just the guy who eats pizza.
The One Bite Reviews. It is a masterclass, a true case study in how simple, niche content can absolutely dominate an algorithm. He started it back in 2017. The premise couldn't be simpler. Review every pizza place in Manhattan.
One bite, everybody knows the rules.
That's the catchphrase. And he has a 0 to 10 scoring scale. The whole thing feels very lo-fi, very authentic. He's just a guy on a sidewalk with an iPhone.
But it's the economic impact that's just wild. The Portnoy bump.
The New York Times and other outlets have analyzed this. They found that a score over a 9.0, which is incredibly rare, he's a very tough grader, isn't just a nice compliment. It is a winning lottery ticket for a small business.
What does that actually look like for a pizzeria?
We're talking about pizzerias that were just doing okay, maybe breaking even, that suddenly have lines around the block for 6 months straight. They go from a local neighborhood spot to a national destination overnight. They have to hire more staff. They start shipping frozen pizzas nationwide. Their revenue doubles or triples, sometimes more, literally overnight.
But it cuts both ways. A bad review can hurt.
Oh, absolutely. He can crush a place too, or at least create a massive headache for the owner. The Dragon Pizza incident in Somerville, Massachusetts, back in August of 2023, is the prime example of that.
That was the shouting match that went viral, right?
It was ugly. It was really uncomfortable to watch. He took a bite of the pizza and called it a floppy mess. He gave it a low score. And the owner, a guy named Charlie Red, came storming out of the shop and confronted him.
He wasn't having it.
He didn't care about the camera at all. He told Portnoy to leave his property, called him all sorts of names. They stood on the sidewalk just screaming expletives at each other. Portnoy was yelling, "I judge pizza." And the owner was yelling back, "I don't care, get out of here."
And the internet ate it up.
That's the entire point. The conflict drove just as much engagement, if not more, than a glowing review. Portnoy understands a fundamental truth of the internet. Anger travels faster than praise. And he even monetized the pizza concept further, didn't he?
Yeah, the One Bite Pizza Festival, it started in 2023 in Brooklyn. He basically brings all the top-rated pizzerias from his reviews together in one place, sells tickets for $100 or whatever, and thousands of people show up to eat pizza. It's brilliant.
It is. But he also seems ruthless about his own content performance.
Yeah.
He treats his own shows like stocks in a portfolio. If one is underperforming, he just cuts it.
He is completely unsentimental. He had a podcast, the Dave Portnoy Show with Eddie and Co. It was doing fine by any normal standard, but in 2022, he just put it on hiatus. Indefinitely.
And his reason?
He publicly said it was terrible. He said the quality had dipped, the energy wasn't there, and instead of letting it limp along and collect ad revenue, he killed it.
That is so rare. Most creators have a huge ego about their shows. They want to keep the streak alive, keep the numbers up, even if the quality suffers.
His ego seems to be tied to winning, not just to existing. You see that with his expansion into golf as well. The Internet Invitational. It's this big YouTube golf tournament he puts on. The 2025 edition, which aired late last year, got over 25 million views.
25 million. That's a number that rivals major network broadcasts for, actual PGA Tour events. And he's doing it just by putting a bunch of influencers on a golf course.
It's a whole new media model. Okay, so we have the business genius and the content machine. Now we have to wade into the murky waters. Politics. This is where people really start to divide on him.
This is where it gets really complicated, the Barstool conservatism.
Define that for me. Because he doesn't seem to fit the traditional Republican mold at all.
He absolutely doesn't. He describes himself as socially liberal, fiscally conservative. And there's some evidence for that. Back in 2013, he actually tried to run for mayor of Boston as a libertarian.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he failed to get enough signatures to get on the ballot. But he did raise about $17,000. It was a real campaign for a minute. Yeah. But the modern definition of his politics is defined almost entirely by his relationship with Donald Trump.
But it's not a straight line of support, is it? It feels complicated.
It's transactional and it's aesthetic. He endorsed Trump back in 2016, but you have to look at his reasoning. He wrote a blog post about it, and he said, quote, "I don't care if he's a joke. I love the fact that he is making other politicians squirm."
So it wasn't about policy, it was about the disruption. He liked that Trump was upsetting the same people in the media and politics that hated Barstool.
He likes the chaos. He loves the chaos. He likes that Trump plays by a different set of rules, just like he does. He ended up interviewing Trump at the White House in 2020, which was a massive coup for a sports blogger.
A huge moment of validation for him.
Absolutely. And he voted for him again in 2024. But then, look at April 2025. The event that traders started calling Orange Monday.
This was the tariff issue.
Right. Trump's second-term tariffs hit the market hard. And Portnoy is a heavy day trader. He has this live stream called Davey Day Trader. He went on camera and revealed he had lost $20 million.
$20 million?
$20 million. 15% of his net worth at the time. Gone. Basically instantly because of the market reaction to the tariffs.
Now, most people would turn on a politician who cost them $20 million in a single afternoon.
And he criticized the policy for sure. He was on camera shouting at the screens, totally panicked, but he also said, and this is a direct quote, "I'm going to roll with him. See how this pans out." He respects the high-stakes nature of it. He views politics almost like sports betting. You know, sometimes you lose big, but you respect the game.
It's an interesting perspective, but where he truly breaks from the traditional right is on social issues, specifically abortion.
He was incredibly vocal when Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022.
And not in a subtle way.
Not at all. He released a video rant calling the decision pure insanity. He said it makes voting for Republicans dangerous because of the Supreme Court appointments they make. He has this very pure libertarian view on it. He said it makes no sense how anybody thinks it's their right to tell a woman what to do with her body.
And that must have alienated a lot of his Magier-aligned fan base.
It did. But he didn't seem to care. He has these core principles, and that's one of them. But then, on the flip side, he'll turn around and say something that completely enrages the left, like the Greta Thunberg comments.
That was from June 2025. What happened there?
Reports came out that Greta Thunberg was on a boat delivering aid to Gaza. Portnoy discussed it on one of his shows and basically said he hoped a missile would hit her boat.
That is extreme, even for him.
It's the shock jock DNA coming out. He pushes the envelope right to the edge of the cliff and then a little bit over. He wants the reaction. He wants to say the thing you're absolutely not supposed to say. And this brings us right to the central paradox of the man. How can a guy who wishes violence on a climate activist also be considered a hero by so many communities?
The philanthropy. It's the other side of the coin.
It is the shield that deflects so much of the criticism. You cannot have an honest conversation about Dave Portnoy without talking about the Barstool Fund.
Take us back to 2020. The world is shut down.
It's the height of the pandemic. Lockdowns are everywhere. Small businesses are just being absolutely crushed. The government relief, the PPP loans, it was all slow and confusing and hard to get.
And Portnoy steps in.
He launches a fund with a dead simple premise. If you're a small business owner, send us a video telling us your story. If we like it, if we believe in you, we will cut you a check to keep your lights on, no strings attached.
And it just exploded, right?
It went viral instantly.
Yeah.
By May of 2021, he had raised over $39 million for 348 businesses. He was saving mom-and-pop shops, dry cleaners, bowling alleys, little restaurants and bars, while the government was still arguing about the paperwork.
And he would call the owners personally?
He would FaceTime the owners to tell them they were getting the money, and he'd post the videos. And these videos were incredibly emotional. You'd see these 50-year-old guys, tough guys, just breaking down in tears because their life's work was being saved. It softened his public image immensely. It proved he could mobilize his army, as he calls them, for good.
And lately, that mobilization has been about animals.
Miss Peaches. He adopted her from a shelter in Atlanta. She was a rescue pit bull, and she looked pretty rough when he got her. He nursed her back to health, and she became this massive internet sensation.
So he uses her fame for fundraising.
Constantly. He uses her likeness on merchandise, hoodies, T-shirts, all that stuff. In 2024 alone, he donated $277,000 to the Lifeline Animal Project in Atlanta, which is where he got her.
And he also puts his own money up for law enforcement families, too.
Huge amounts of his own money. When NYPD officer Jonathan Diller was killed in the line of duty in 2024, Portnoy launched a fundraiser, and he personally matched donations up to $750,000. The fund raised over $1.5 million total for the family.
He did it again recently, right?
Just in December 2025, a Delaware state trooper was killed, and he raised nearly $500,000 for that family.
So here's the tension. He saves puppies, he saves businesses, he supports grieving widows. But then, union buster.
Right. This is the dark side of the business model. You can't separate the charity from the combat. The union issue goes back to 2019. Employees at The Ringer, Bill Simmons' company, were unionizing.
And Portnoy had thoughts.
He had some very strong thoughts. He tweeted that he would fire any of his own employees on the spot if they so much have contacted a union organizer.
Which is, I should point out, completely illegal under U.S. labor law. You cannot threaten to fire people for organizing.
100% illegal.
Yeah.
And the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, they stepped in. They launched a formal investigation. He eventually had to settle with them, delete the tweets, post notices in the office acknowledging workers' rights, the whole standard punishment.
But what did Dave do? Did he apologize? Did he say, I learned my lesson about labor law?
Let me guess. He made a T-shirt about it.
He made a T-shirt with his own face on it that said Union Buster and sold it to his fans for $25 a pop. He took a federal investigation and turned it into a new revenue stream. It was a masterclass in defiance. That seems to be the pattern. Controversy equals cash. But surely there is a line. What about the sexual assault allegations? That felt different.
That was the biggest threat to his uncancelable status. It was a series of articles from Business Insider. They published 2 major exposés in late 2021 and early 2022.
And these weren't just about offensive jokes.
No, these are serious allegations. Multiple women came forward and alleged violent, aggressive sexual encounters, and in some cases, non-consensual filming.
How did he respond to that?
He denied them vehemently.
Yeah.
He went on the offensive immediately. He claimed every single encounter was consensual. He called the articles hit pieces and character assassination. He basically argued that Business Insider was a competitor and was trying to take him down because they didn't like his politics or his style.
He sued them for defamation, right?
He did. He filed a lawsuit against Business Insider and its parent company.
And what was the legal outcome of that lawsuit?
A federal judge dismissed the lawsuit in November of 2022. The judge ruled that Portnoy, as a public figure, had failed to prove actual malice, which is the very high legal standard you have to meet.
So what does that mean in plain English?
It means he couldn't prove that Business Insider knew the stories were false and published them anyway. It's not a judgment on whether the allegations were true or false, just that the reporting met the legal standard for journalism about a public figure. Portnoy initially appealed the decision, but then he dropped the appeal in February 2023.
So legally, the defamation case failed. But because it wasn't a criminal trial against him, he was able to maintain his innocence in the court of public opinion, at least with his followers.
And his audience stayed with him. They bought his narrative completely. They viewed it as the mainstream media attacking their guy. And this is where the uncancelable theory really holds up. If you own your platform and your audience doesn't care what the New York Times or Business Insider says about you, you are essentially immune.
Advertisers might leave for a while.
Advertisers might leave, but if you have subscriptions and merchandise and direct-to-consumer revenue, you can survive. You're not beholden to them.
He also has a long history of refusing to apologize for offensive humor. The rape jokes, the videos that surfaced of him using racial slurs in the past.
He views an apology as blood in the water. It's his core philosophy, and he has said this many times, is that if you apologize to the internet mob, they don't forgive you. They just sense weakness and attack you even harder.
So he doubles down every single time.
Every time. He says, I'm a comedian, it's a joke, and he moves on. The skinny jeans comment from way back in 2010 is the classic example. He wrote a blog joking that a woman who is size 6 and wears skinny jeans kind of deserves to be raped.
Which is just, it's horrific. It's indefensible.
It is. But when Inside Edition confronted him about it years later, asking him if he knew how offensive that was, he looked right into the camera and said, no, I obviously don't. I think it's a funny joke.
It takes a specific kind of personality to stare into a camera and say that without flinching.
It does.
Right.
And clearly it pays. I mean, let's look at the lifestyle this uncancelable brand has bought him.
We mentioned the private jets, but the real estate portfolio is just staggering.
The total portfolio is valued at around $65 million. The Nantucket house made national headlines. He bought it in 2023 for $43 million. At the time, it was the most expensive home ever sold in the entire state of Massachusetts.
That is succession-level wealth. That is
Yeah.
not blogger wealth.
Not even close. He also has a $14 million waterfront place in Miami, a nearly $10 million home in Montauk out on Long Island, and a smaller spot in Saratoga Springs because he loves horse racing. He's collecting trophies. These houses are trophies.
But there is one detail about his finances that I found really interesting, and it involves his ex-wife, Renee.
Renee Satterthwaite. Yeah, this is a fascinating part of his story. They were married from 2009 to 2017, so she was there for the really tough years.
He was there for the bankruptcy. She was there when he was handing out newspapers on a freezing subway corner. She was the one behind the scenes when absolutely nobody knew who Dave Portnoy was.
Lean years, exactly. And Portnoy has stated publicly, even after their divorce, that he allows her complete access to his money and his assets. He takes care of her financially to a huge degree because of her loyalty when he had absolutely nothing.
That creates such a complex picture. He is this aggressive, sometimes toxic internet warlord, but he has this intense, almost mafioso-style code of loyalty to the people in his inner circle.
That is the core of the Portnoy paradox. If you are with him, he will run through a brick wall for you. He will give you his credit card. If you're against him, like the union organizers or the pizza shop owners he doesn't like, he will try to publicly destroy you. There is no middle ground. You are either a stoolie or you are an enemy.
So as we wrap this up, looking at the Fox Sports deal, the buyback, the incredible influence, what is the final takeaway? What does this all mean?
I think we are looking at a new model of celebrity and maybe a new model of power.
Yeah.
Dave Portnoy proved that you don't need the approval of the traditional gatekeepers, the legacy media, the HR departments, the cultural critics, to win. In fact, fighting them is the business model.
The opposition is the product.
The opposition is the entire product. He proved that if you build a direct, unwavering relationship with an audience, you can survive almost anything.
But now that he is on Fox Sports, now that he's a legitimate part of the establishment he used to mock, has he become the gatekeeper?
That is the big provocative question for the next decade, isn't it? Can you stay a renegade when you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars and you're appearing on national broadcasts every Saturday? Can you still represent the common man from a $43 million estate in Nantucket?
Or does the system eventually absorb everyone, no matter how much they fight it?
It feels like he is trying to ride two horses at once, the outlaw and the mogul, the guy on the street corner and the guy in the boardroom.
And so far, somehow, he hasn't fallen off.
Well, I guess we'll see if he starts censoring his pizza reviews now that he's on network TV.
Knowing Dave, I would not bet a single dollar on that happening.
That's it for this deep dive into the world of El Presidente. Whether you're Team Portnoy or not, you absolutely can't deny that impact. Thanks for listening.
Stay curious.